all right. Welcome to Pro Football's first 50 years, where we take the past, bring it back to life. Now, you can go on the internet, and I'm talking strictly here the first 50 years, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you go back into the 20s and the 30s and all, I mean, you can go back online and you can pick up, search any game and pick up like the box score for the game, like maybe who scored what touchdown, and maybe how far the touchdown pass was, or find out what the final score was, where the game was played at. You might actually find out the starting lineups for each team, maybe what the attendance was for each particular game and all. But exactly what happened during each and every individual game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a bit of a deeper dive into each and every game, such as this game right here. Now, you might be able to find even like little video clips here and there of some of these games from the past. But as I said, thanks to some old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive in. And thanks to some newspaper here, we had to find out what happened in each and every play of this particular game that we're going to go over. Now, just a little news flash here for you. There's no fancy videos or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. So today's game we're going to talk about is 1930, November 2nd. 1930. Game played between the Portsmouth Spartans and the Green Bay Packers. I'm so happy they changed their name to the Detroit Lions. Portsmouth Spartans. Games played at City Stadium, Green Bay. This game was not very close, but I said this is the Portsmouth Spartans. They would become in 1934 the Detroit Lions, but this was their first year in the league. They were competitive, but in this game, not so much. They were first. We're going to go over this in a little bit here. They were first, obviously, were located in Portsmouth, Ohio. They were in, as many teams had back then, got into financial difficulties. The team was sold to another group or another guy or so. They moved the team to Detroit, and now they are known as the Detroit Lions. But with this game here, let's go over real fast, show you the schedule here. The Green Bay Packers, this would be their second season, their three-peat. 1929, they won the overall championship. 1930, this season, they would once again win the overall championship. In 1931, they would win the overall championship as well, too. It'd be the first three-peat in NFL history. They would start the season off here 8-0, and then they would stumble toward the end, and it would be a very close finish in this season here, 1930. It was from 1920 to 1932. There were no championship games. 1932, there was a playoff game between these very Portsmouth Spartans and the Chicago Bears, because both teams finished with identical records of 6-1. Ties did not count in the standings back then like they do today. So both teams were 6-1. They both had the identical winning percentage, and they wound up playing a playoff game to see who would win the championship. And it was played in the Chicago Blackhawks home. It was played in a hockey arena, the playoff game of all things, due to a possible blizzard that never came. And the Chicago Bears would wind up winning 9-0. That was in 1932, but it was not a championship game. It was a playoff game to see who would win the championship. It wasn't until 1933 that the first championship game was scheduled, shall we say. But the Green Bay Packers were very, very good this year. In 1930, they would win the overall championship. At the end of the season, they had winning percentage of 769. The New York Giants, on the other hand, would have a winning percentage of 765. So by .004, the Green Bay Packers would win the 1930 overall championship. So they were a very, very good team. And I said that the Spartans were like about a 500 team. Let's go over the schedule here real fast. Take a gander here. Show you what each team was doing that year. Now, one of the things you'll notice here too is this would be the final game of the season in Green Bay. Now, what they tried to do was, because, going back 100 years in time, before global warming, shall we say, it would get very cold in Green Bay. Don't get me wrong, it gets cold there today. Don't get me wrong. But the way it was back then was they tried to play all their home games early and then get the heck out of Dodge and play the road games at the end of the season in warmer climates, if you want to call it that. Now, as you'll see here, they started off playing a home game here against the Oshkosh All-Stars. It wasn't much of a game, but it was an exhibition game. Then they started their regular season. They played the Cardinals at home, the Bears at home, the Giants at home, the Yellow Jackets at home. Then they played the Minneapolis Redjackets on the road at Nicollet Park. Then they would come back the very next week, play the Minneapolis Redjackets at home. All these games were played in Green Bay at City Stadium. Then they would play the Spartans here on November 2nd, 1930. And as I said, it wasn't much of a game. Spoiler alert. Packers would win this game 47-13. Now, back in the day, you put up 47 points. You go back, that's a lot of points. That's a whole lot of points. That's a major thrashing. Right? Says they played this game in Green Bay City Stadium. But then you'll notice after this, right? They played the Bears, the Cardinals, the Giants, the Yellow Jackets, the Newark Tornadoes, who were in the league, Staten Island Stapletons, who were in the league, Chicago Bears, and once again, the Spartans. But you'll notice, right, this game was on the road. The Bears, Cardinals on the road, Giants on the road, Frankford, all these final games were on the road. Well, this is where they started stumbling. They would win this game, they would win the final. The next game against the Bears to put them at 8-0, the Packers, for this particular season. Then they would start to stumble, and that's where the race for number one would start getting interesting. They would lose to the Cardinals, who were not very good that year. Then they lost in New York to the Giants, who were the second best team that year. They beat the Yellow Jackets. The game against the Tornadoes, this one got canceled, but then they wanted to play in the Staten Island Stapletons. They won that one. But then they lost to the Bears, and they tied the Spartans, the final game of the season. Now here, just to show you how close this game was, how close this title race was. Both teams scored a touchdown in this final game of the season. Green Bay scored first, if I remember correctly, in this final game against the Spartans. They missed their extra point. The Spartans scored then. They missed their extra point. So the game wound up tied 6-6. But just to go show you, if the Spartans had made their extra point, and if the Spartans had won this game 7-6, the New York Giants would have won the championship. The Giants would have had a better overall winning percentage. So it was very, very close that year. Very exciting. But we'll go to the Spartans here. All right. They played quite a few games. This would be the Packers' 7th overall game. This would be the Spartans 1, 2. There's an exhibition game, 3, 4, 5, exhibition game, 6, 7. This would be the Spartans' 8th game of the season in the league. Now you see they lost a few, they won a couple, so it was like, and the final record overall, it was 5, 6, and 3. For the first year in the league, not too bad. But the one thing was with the Spartans is that they would get better. As I said, in 1932, the Spartans, I think they were 6-1-4. Ties didn't count. So basically, at the end of the season, they were 6-1. So, they would continue to get better. 1932, as I mentioned, they had the playoff game against the Chicago Bears, and they would lose 9-0. But once again, they were a good team. Not so much this season, but in 1935, they would win the overall championship, beating the New York Giants 26-7. So they were a good team. They were a good team. And as I said, you can see after this game here, they lost, and they tied a game, they lost, they won a game, they lost, they won, they tied. So they're like floating around 500, all year long. Let's go over real fast here. Let me share my screen, and we'll go over a little bit of the story of where the Spartans started, and how they changed their name to the Lions because they wound up playing, and it was in Detroit. What you had was, interesting enough, you had the Bears played in Chicago with Wrigley Field. Well, actually, that was Wrigley Field, but when he first started playing, it was called Cubs Park. Well, it was the Chicago Cubs, who were a bear. It's a bear, Cub Bear, right? Well, the Chicago football team were they called the Bears. Chicago Cubs were called, the Cubs, a baby bear. While the football team was called, the Bears, the grown-up animal. Well, with Detroit, it's kind of the same. Detroit was the Tigers in baseball, while the football team was the Lions, the more the bigger, more ferocious name. So, all right, let me share my screen here again. All right, here we go. Here's this right now. The Spartans. I'm a cool name, Spartans. Can't complain about that. But the Spartans were a professional American football team that played in Portsmouth, Ohio, from their founding in 1928 to their relocation to Detroit in 1934. Originally drawing players from defunct independent professional and semi-professional teams, they joined the fledgling NFL in 1930. So this is their first year in the league. Their home stadium was Universal Stadium, known today as Spartan Municipal Stadium. The team was sold to a new ownership group in 1934 and relocated to Detroit, where they became the Detroit Lions, a team which remains part of the NFL today. The Spartans formed in 1928 when a team began importing players from defunct independent professional and semi-professional teams. The following year, Portsmouth residents agreed to fund the construction of a football stadium that was comparable to those in neighboring communities along the Ohio River. Football was huge in Ohio. A lot of teams that were in the NFL came from Ohio. Not ones that are still around. I mean, obviously, you got the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals, but back then, there was a lot of teams that were in the American Professional Football Association, which was the NFL in 1920-21, and the NFL. So a lot of teams came from Ohio back then. That approval prompted the National Football League to grant the city a franchise on July 12, 1930. The Spartans played their first NFL game at Universal Stadium on September 14th. With fewer than 43,000 residents in 1930, Portsmouth became the NFL's second smallest city, ahead of only Green Bay, which had a population of under 38,000. During the team's first year in the league, the Spartans compiled a record of 5-6-3. Tying for seventh place in the 11-team league in 1930. At the end of the 1931 season, the Packers refused to play the Spartans in a game that had been tentatively scheduled since before the season had started. The Packers had the best record in the league at 12-2, but had not played the Spartans, who had the second best record at 11-3. The president of the Packers at the time, Lee Johannes, said there was no logical reason to play the Spartans because they're a bunch of pussies because they didn't want to lose. So the Green Bay Packers were pussies, absolute chicken scratch pussies. No logical reason to play the Spartans. This led to a new regime for scheduling the entire NFL season of games in advance by a 3-person committee designated by the NFL itself. Ratification by 3/4 of all NFL teams was required before a season would be played. It was the end of a ad hoc scheduling by teams and eventually led to the NFL teams only playing other NFL teams. So apparently, there had been a game that had been tentatively scheduled since before the season started. The Packers had the best record and did not want to play the Spartans, who had the second best record. So I guess they realized that had they played, they might have lost. And they both, I guess, would have both had been records of 12-3. So Packers were a bunch of chicken scratch pussies. But an early highlight of the 1932 season was the Iron Man game against the Packers. In that game, the Spartans coach Potsy Clark refused to make even a single substitution against the defending NFL champion Packers. Portsmouth won 19-0 and used only 11 players all game. So they showed the pussy-ass Packers, right, beat up on them. At the end of the season, the Spartans were tied for first place in the league with the Bears. That prompted what, in retrospect, became known as the first NFL playoff game. Blizzard conditions in Chicago meant the game was moved from Wrigley Field outdoors to the indoor field at Chicago Stadium, which allowed for an only 80-yard field. Man, this is ridiculous. Bears won the game 9-0. The resulting interest led to establish of the Eastern and Western divisions and a regular championship game beginning in 1933. During their final 3 years in Portsmouth, the Spartans posted a record of 23-9-4, a 7-18 winning percentage that was surpassed only by the Bears. Despite their success on the gridiron, the Spartans were fighting to survive on the field, though. The team was in so much debt that the players received shares in the team in lieu of their salaries. And it's a shame because they had such a good team. They were winning, but still, they had difficult surviving. So, in 1934, a group led by George A. Richards, the owner of the Detroit radio station WJR, was announced as having bought the Spartans and moved them to Detroit for the 1934 season. Richards renamed the team the Lions. He not only wanted to offer a nod to the Detroit Tigers, but also wanted to signal his goal of building a team that would be the king of the NFL. And so that was in 1934. And then in 1935, they would wind up winning the championship. So, they were a very good team. Very, very good team back then. So, but this game here was played at City Stadium, home of the Green Bay Packers. All right, let me share my screen here, and we'll, all right. Wait. Okay, here we go. Here's an aerial view. The first ever aerial view of a game that was played in 1931. Okay, this one was played, this aerial view of City Stadium here is from September 27, 1931, the first official aerial photograph of the Green Bay Packers Stadium, or City Stadium, by Otto Stiller. The Packers beat the Bears this day 7-0. But, as you can see here, right, the stadium would eventually become a horseshoe shape, but not so much early on. See, obviously you got the stands over here. You got some people in the end zone here. There's people in the end zone here. And then you got the stands over here. But none of this was connected. As eventually become a nice horseshoe shape where there'd be a nice bunch of the stands would be back here, and then this would all be a nice horseshoe. Let me show you in the next picture here. So that was this picture's from 1931. So this picture taken here was pretty much almost what the stadium looked like when they played this game that we're going to talk about in 1930. But as the years went along, it started getting more of that horseshoe shape to it. Like right here. More well-defined horseshoe shape here. So yeah, you got the horseshoe, right? Nice, nice looking horseshoe here. See these stands? Yeah, I had the stands on the side, and the other picture where they got connected over here. Same thing here. You had the stands over here, and then they got connected. So yeah, the horseshoe is rather well defined here. And then in this one end zone, you had the stands here, right? But they weren't connected. I don't know why they didn't want to connect it, make it a bowl. I don't know why they just chose to make the horseshoe out of it. But the horseshoe-shaped stadium was made of wood and originally did not have any toilet facilities. It stood behind East High School and next to the East River. Packers used the school for locker room facilities, but visiting teams often dressed at their hotel, usually the Hotel Northland, before the game rather than use the lockers at East High. The stadium originally seated 6,000 and its capacity was gradually expanded to 25,000. The Packers compiled a 88-41-7 record at City Stadium, including NFL championship seasons in 29, 30, 31, 36, 39, and 44. However, City Stadium never hosted an NFL championship game. Of the 4 championship games the Packers played in during the years of City Stadium, the team only hosted one in the 1939 title game when they beat the Giants 27-0. But that title game was played in Milwaukee instead. It wasn't played in Green Bay. Although City Stadium was the Packers' official home field in 1933, during the worst of the Great Depression, they began to play part of their home schedule in Milwaukee. After holding one contest at Borchard Field in 1933, the Packers played 2 or 3 home games each year in Milwaukee, at State Fair Park in West Allis from 1934 to 1951, and at Marquette Stadium in 1952. The games were moved to County Stadium after it opened in 1953. Their practice continued through 1994, after which they once again played all their games in Green Bay. Now, one of the problems was, while its playing surface was consistently praised by the 1950s, the stadium was seen as too small and inadequate even after expansion, which was limited both natural and man-made factors, including both East High to the south and East River on its north and east edges. The leaders of the NFL, including George Halas, gave the Packer board an ultimatum: build a new stadium, move to Milwaukee full-time. So, I mean, as you can see, right? There's only so much they can do. They got, the water back here, so that, it made it hard to, expand, or, make the stadium much better. I mean, they could have gone this way a little bit, right? And it would have knocked these buildings down, I guess, over here. But so, all right, let me go a little bit more over here. And then we'll start talking about the game. All right. Good boy. Hi, buddy. All right. Okay, here we go. All right. Now here's a little color. It's like a more like a painting kind of whatever, not an actual picture. But this is 1948. You see the nice, well-defined horseshoe here, right? But see, the problem was they had these buildings back here. That I guess this might be the high school here or someplace over here. So it was very difficult for them to expand the stadium. I mean, literally, if to do anything here, they probably would have knocked down these buildings over here to make it any bigger, right? Same thing over here. They had a couple buildings over here, made things a little difficult. I had to try to knock this down here. Then obviously, of course, over here you got the water. And then behind the stadium, you had water too. So for it to really expand out back this way, was kind of difficult. All right, City Stadium, known as East Stadium from 1962 to 2002, is an American football stadium in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The stadium was built in 1925 for use by Green Bay East High School, located just to the south of the stadium, and the Green Bay Packers of the National Football League. City Stadium was the third home field for the Packers after Hagermeister Park and Bellevue Park, and remained as such until 1956. During this time, it was expanded from about 5,000 seats to 25,000 seats. In 1933, the Packers began splitting their home games between Green Bay and Milwaukee, a practice that lasted until 1994, when they once again returned to playing all their home games in Green Bay. By the early 50s, the City Stadium was too small, as we just mentioned in that other article there, and lacked the features expected in modern football stadiums of the time. A bond initiative passed in the city of Green Bay to fund a new stadium for the Packers. After the Packers moved to New City Stadium, later renamed Lambeau Field, for the 1957 season, Old City Stadium was downsized and continued to be used by East High School. In the early 2000s, the facility underwent multiple renovations, including enhancements to the playing field and stands, as well as the installation of features honoring the stadium's history as it related to the Packers. This included a historic marker and a sign for the Packers Heritage Trail. All right, a little bit of the history here. The Packers were founded in 1919 by Curly Lambeau and George Whitney Calhoun. From 1919 to 1922, they played their games at Hagermeister Park, a recreational area that hosted various sports and outdoor activities. Small wooden bleachers were constructed, with some fans lining the playing field or sitting on their cars to watch the game. After the property was used to build a new Green Bay East High School, the Packers moved to the other side of East River to Bellevue Park, which had been constructed to house a local baseball team that had also played at Hagermeister. The wood used for the bleachers at Hagermeister was reused to build a grandstand and bleachers at Bellevue. Bellevue Park had its challenges, though. With the field dimensions more conducive to baseball, its location far from town, and poor parking, after 2 seasons at Bellevue in 1923 and 24, demand for a dedicated football stadium for the Packers grew. And they, I'll tell you what, they, as they do today, back then, they loved their football in Green Bay. City Stadium was built just north of Green Bay East High School, meaning it was adjacent to the former Hagermeister Park. The stadium was developed for use by Green East High School and Green Bay West High School, but in reality, the stadium was built to support the Packers. As its original capacity, the wooden bleachers fit more than 5,000 fans. It did not have any locker rooms, meaning that the Packers had to use adjacent facilities, including the downtown Columbus Club, while visiting teams usually got dressed at their hotel before coming to the stadium. Packers played exclusively at City Stadium for their home games until 1933, when they began playing some of their games in Milwaukee. In 1933, they played 1 home game at Borchard Field before playing a few home games a year at the Wisconsin State Fair Park from 1934 to 1951. 1952, they played 3 home games at Marquette Stadium while awaiting the completion of Milwaukee County Stadium, where they would play until 1994, when the team returned to playing all their home games at Green Bay. In addition to high school and NFL games, the City Stadium also hosted a few St. Norbert Green Knights football games from the 1930s to the 1950s. During the stadium's earlier years, seating capacity would fluctuate based on expected crowd sizes, with temporary seating built prior to the games. The stadium underwent different improvements and expansions throughout its life. The original wood fence was replaced with a wire and canvas fence in 1927, although a wooden fence returned 8 years later. 1929, a public announcement system with 8 speakers around the stadium was installed. Lighting to allow for high school teams to play night games on Fridays was added in 1935. From 1936 to 1940, City Stadium underwent its most significant enhancements. A locker room for the Packers was built underneath the south stands in 1936, while a year later, a new press box, game clock, and fence was added, while the old bleachers were either replaced or significantly repaired. Seating for 5,000 more fans and better toilet facilities was also added. Packers announced another project the next year to add another 6,500 seats to the stadium by connecting the 2 grandstands, forming a horseshoe shape, which you can see obviously in those pictures. This project, which was funded by a grant, also added a new restrooms, better training areas, and a stage for the Lumberjack Band. Another grant in 1940 funded a new sandstone wall that formed a new front entrance for the stadium. 1956 games from City Stadium were televised for the first time, with 3 games airing on CBS. So then you start talking more and more, the seating capacity, peaked at 25,000 during the last season. So that was one of the problems, obviously, is that you can only expand on it so much. So the demand for a new stadium, and that's basically what wound up happening there. But the Green Bay Packers and the Spartans here are still with us here today. So I'm going to go over a couple of articles here. And once again, thanks to the Green Bay Press Gazette, we're going to have an article, basically it's 2 pages long, and it'll go pretty much play by play of what happened in this football game. But first off, all right, let's see here. We're going to go to the Cincinnati Enquirer. So we're going to go to a paper from Ohio where the Spartans are from. And a nice little ad here, an article here on them, on this game here. All right. The Spartans fall. Green Bay wins 47-13. To run victory stirring to 7 triumphs in a row for the Packers. After they win here, they were 7-0. They would win once again. They would win the following week, become 8-0, and then they started stumbling there toward the end of the season. The Spartans' backfield stopped as the Packers take commanding lead in the first 3 periods. And yes, they did. They like I said, man, you put up over 40 points back in the day in the game. That was a lot of points. All right. A mighty Green Bay football team crushed the Spartan 11 by a 47-13 score in a National League game here this afternoon before approximately 9,000 fans, and obviously here, meaning in Green Bay. Excuse me. It was the 7th consecutive win for the Packers in the National League competition and keeps the team's record spotless for the season. The Spartan team, boasting one of the greatest backfields in the National League, was stopped cold by the Packer men in the early stages of the game. Not until late in the 3rd period, when the Packers had run up a 33-0 lead, did the Green Bay team let up, and the Spartans connected for a couple of passes that brought touchdowns. Packers mixed passes and running plays to score the victory, smashing the Portsmouth front wall to pieces in the early stages and then taking to the overhead game to add other points. A remarkable record was made by the Packers in completing 7 of 9 forward passes during the game. Spartans completed only 5 of 21 passes. 3 of the Packer passes counted for touchdowns. Llewellyn, the Packer halfback, counted Green Bay's first touchdown in the first quarter, smashing over center after running plays had put the ball on the 4-yard line. Llewellyn again scored on a play from scrimmage in the second quarter, hitting the center for a 5-yard gain after passes and cut-back runs had brought the ball to the 5-yard line. The third score came on the second period. I guess it might be in the second period. Melinda going over the goal from 2-yard line, straight football, put the ball in scoring distance, meaning just running plays. McCrary scored twice in the third period for Green Bay, taking passes from Dunn to gallop over the goal line. A pass from Lumpkin to McLean scored for the Spartans in the third period, and in the final quarter, a pass and a smash by Novotny, I guess, scored it again for the Invaders. Lewis added the extra point. Fitzgibbons scored Green Bay's 6th touchdown, and Dilweg took a pass from Dunn for the final marker. Dunn added 3 points for the Green Bay by kicks from placement, and Melinda counted twice on similar kicks. Lumpkin and McLean were outstanding for the Spartans, smashing ahead for many good gains. And now here you got the lineups for both teams. Here you got, obviously, the score. It's a little, where are we at here? So, some things change. Right? Where, there's some discrepancies here. Like you see, you got in this paper here, the Spartans scored according to them in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, giving them 13 points. But I stop sharing my screen here for just a second. I'm going to go over here and share my screen. What they have online, okay, is a little bit different. This must be some type of, see, this is the Pro Football Archives. They have some great stuff here. See, here they got the Spartans scoring in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. But then over here, they have the Spartans scoring all their points in the fourth quarter. So it's a little misleading, some of this stuff. So if you see this is probably wrong. You go online, and, if you ever look at this online, they got 13 points in the fourth quarter. Well, apparently, is what's happened here. But they have it here. The third quarter, Spartans scored, and then in the fourth quarter, the Spartans scored. So this looks like this is wrong here. All right, so let me stop share my screen here. We'll go back to the other one. I do apologize. Just want to show you, sometimes there's discrepancies between what you see online, what actually happened in the game. Sometimes you'll see discrepancies between two different newspapers. It is what it is. All right, let me share. Let's see where we at here. Oh, there we go. All right. I do apologize for that. But you'll see here, I had a lot of substitutes. There's a lot of substitutes played in this game here. But the one thing that happened was, with the Packers, and what rightfully happened back then was, if they get a comfortable lead, they just start changing out their stars. Get the stars off the freaking field, get them on the sideline, drinking some Kool-Aid or water, and put their substitutes in there. If anybody's going to get hurt, let it be the substitutes. Or, let the substitutes get in some game action. But get your stars off the field. You don't need them on the field. Get them out of there. So, but you see, the Packers, Packers had, all these substitutes here. And where the Spartans at here? I got to look for let's see. Herbert for Alpha Nash. Oh, okay, here you go. They said Portsmouth, right? So they had all of these substitutes here. So they had a lot of subs stuff. Possibly what the Spartans tried to do is like to put the original guy, the initial 11 was on the field, and it's like, man, we stink. Let's start changing stuff up. See if we can get something to actually work. Then you got the ref. What do we got here? Then you got the referee was Kahn from Chicago. The umpire was Keefe from Milwaukee. Head linesman was Johnson from Chicago. And you can see after the game was over, right? Green Bay was 7-0. They led the league with a 1,000 winning percentage. The Giants were in second place, 8-1. 889. So these two teams would battle it out right to the end. Both these teams, interestingly, would start stumbling. The Giants at the end of the season would have 4 losses. The Green Bay Packers at the end of the season would have 3 losses. So between these two teams, they would have a total of 7 losses. But here we are. About halfway through the season, literally. Really. Right about the halfway point. And these two teams have a grand total of 1 loss. On the second half of the season, they would wind up getting 6 more. Each team would have 3 more losses. So the Packers are now 7-0. They would wind up 10-3. The Giants are 8-1. Well, they would wind up 13-4. So these teams started stumbling toward the end of the season. And the Bears would start coming on strong. The Bears would have a good finish at the end. I think the Bears would only lose, maybe 1 more game the rest of the season. And their winning percentage would just start crawling up right. So it was a very, very interesting football season, especially, to see who would wind up winning the overall championship. All right. So let's go now to, once again, I said that doesn't happen much, but when Green Bay plays, and especially when they're playing at home, the Green Bay Press-Gazette really takes care of us. Play-by-play action here. So it's a 2-page. First, we're going to go to page 13 of the Green Bay Press-Gazette. All right. Packers trounce the Spartans 47-13. And you'll see here the Spartans scored 6 points and then 7 points. So in the Pro Football Archives, they had them in that one little area there scoring 13 points in the fourth quarter, which is not true. This is a picture here. All right. Very difficult. And there's a touchdown being scored here, but it's, you can see a couple guys, the ref here, there's a guy here, there's a couple guys here, a couple guys here, another ref here, but kind of like a mass of humanity in here. The picture taken at the Packers-Spartan football game shows Llewellyn going over the goal line for the first score of the afternoon. So this is the first touchdown in the game. So I'm not exactly. It's kind of difficult to find it exactly, right in here. But I guess this is the goal line right here. I'm assuming. This is the goal line. This is maybe the 5-yard line over here. Maybe, I guess. But there's a touchdown in there. Once again, all right. Here's the here's the starting lineups. All the substitutes. There's your referee, the officials. Once again, here's the standings. Packers in first place, Giants in second place. Now, once again, do apologize. I believe it said that there was 9,000 fans there in the other newspaper. Let me excuse me. I do apologize. Let's see. Where are we here? Is this it? Where are we here? Say 9? Yeah. There were 9,000 fans, according to the Cincinnati Enquirer. It said there was about approximately 9,000 fans. Well, over here it says there's 7,500 fans. So there may be a better football team than the Packers someplace in the world, but you couldn't make some 7,500 fans who saw them trounce the Spartan 11 here Sunday, 47-13, believe it. Excuse me. Even if there is a better team, it would be hard to find, and as no one cares to look for it, it might not be a bad idea to explain how those 7,500 fans got the impression that the Packers has such a wonder team. In the first place, it would be hard to find a team that can complete passes like the Packers completed them on Sunday. 7 of their 9 passes tried were good for yardage. Not bad when it's considered that no less an authority than Knute Rockne says that a team that completes 35% of its passes has a great passing attack. 35%. So if you complete 1/3 of your passes back in the day, that was great. Now, if you only complete 35% of your passes, your GM's fired, the coach is fired, everybody's fired. They just fold the team. You only complete 35%. So now you got to complete 70% of your passes to have a good passing attack. Never had a chance. Then it would be hard to find a team that has a line that opens holes like the Packer line opened them in the Spartan front wall. The records tell us that the Packers gained 206 yards against the Spartans by running plays. It would be hard to find a team with ends like Dilweg, Nash, and O'Donnell, or with backfield men like Llewellyn, Dunn, McCrary, Fitzgibbons, and Melinda, to say nothing of these youngsters who are looking better every Sunday. Herber and Zoldmulder, excuse me, and those on the injured list. What about the pass defense and line play on defense? Someone might ask, but why go on? The score speaks for itself, as does the record of the team in the other 6 games it won in the National League competition this year. So we will go back to some of the details of the game. Spartans never had a chance after the Packer began getting up power early in the first period. Although the Spartans fought hard, there wasn't much doubt about the outcome when the Packers marched down from the middle of the field and over the goal line for the first score in the opening period, and when 2 more touchdowns were recorded in the second period, what little doubt that existed about the outcome was brushed aside. Timing is perfect. Timing of the Packer forward pass and running plays is excellent throughout the game, or was excellent throughout the game. The linemen took out the men they were supposed to take out, and the backs carried. So now let's go to page 14, column 6. And the backs carried, I'm imagining. All right, page 14. There we go. And the backs carried, is that right? There you go. Back carried the ball and gained according to their ability to pivot or shift or drive as the occasion demanded. However, even in defeat, there were 2 Spartan men who stood out, heads and shoulders above the others in football playing ability. The pair was McLean and Father Lumpkin. Seldom has there been seen here such an example of individual play as these 2 men turned in, carrying the ball off tackle, over guard, and through the center on play after play. These 2 men smashed ahead by sheer power. True Packer linemen stopped them, but they had their hands full doing so, and often when they thought they had them stopped, they managed somehow to keep on going for another 3, 4, or 5 yards. The victory may have cost the Packers the services of Lavi Dilweg and Michaelesky, I'm not sure. So I just call him Michael. So the services of Michael in the Chicago Bear game next Sunday. Dilweg sprained his wrist early in the game, but continued to play until the end of the battle, turning in his customary great work. After the game, he was ordered to the hospital as Dr. W.W. Kelly feared that the wrist was broken, but X-ray pictures revealed only a severe sprain. Mike sprained his ankle late in the game and had to be helped from the field. A pass from Llewellyn to Dunn was the starting spark in the first march of the Packers. Dunn caught the ball on the Spartans' 30-yard line and carried it to the 26-yard stripe before he was down. Llewellyn and McCrary then began finding the holes open for them by the linemen, crashing their way for 2 first downs by straight football. to put the ball on the 3-yard line. Again, Llewellyn carried the ball, cutting back over center for touchdown. Dunn booted the ball from placement squarely between the uprights, and the Packers had a 7-0 lead. So here they say first one was the 3-yard run, touchdown run. Fleckenstein catches pass. In the second period, the Spartans threatened when Fleckenstein, a former Bear, now playing end with the Spartans, scored a pass on the Packers' 15-yard line after Lumpkin had picked up some yardage with power thrust at the line. A pass over the goal line, however, spoiled the scoring opportunity. Once again, back then, I don't know why, but his rules were if you throw the ball over the goal line and it falls incomplete, it's a touchback. The other team gets the ball. So if you throw the ball over the goal line, you better make darn sure it gets completed or you lose the ball. But you get down there and you get no points out of it. A few minutes later, McCrary intercepted a Spartan pass in the center of the field, and again, Melinda, McCrary, and Llewellyn began smashing down the field as Dunn picked the weak spots in the Spartan defense and capitalized on them. Melinda made 7 yards, Llewellyn made 6, McCrary 9. That's the way it went until the Packers reached the 15-yard line. On a fake pass play, Dunn then circled left end, evading one man with a shifty sidestep, but getting stopped by 2 others as he reached the 1-yard line. Dunn called a play for Llewellyn to carry the ball, and Llewellyn delivered, crashing over center for a touchdown from 1 yard out. And again, Dunn kicked for the extra point, and the score was now 14-0 in Green Bay's favor. Llewellyn got off a great punt later in the period, Tom Nash downing the ball on the 5-yard line and near the sideline. The Spartans punted back, and Dunn caught the ball in midfield, racing to the 35-yard line before he got to go all the way to the top up here, before he wow. Before he was stopped. Let me read this here real first. Sneak thieves steal $110 from players. Now, still $110 back then. That's a lot of money. While the Packers were at City Stadium winning the final home game from the Spartans, sneak thieves broke into their locker room at the Columbus Club and rifled the players' pockets of approximately $110 and a wristwatch. Most of the men lost sums ranging from 45 cents to $3. Claude Perry was the hardest hit, as $13 was taken from his pockets. Cal Hubbard lost $12, Raddick lost $8, and Zuber lost $6. The wristwatch taken from Dick O'Donnell was the only jewelry stolen. It was a Gruen watch. So, unfortunately, everything was someplace else. I guess there was no security or nothing like that around. They locked the room up, but it did no good. Some scumbags went in there and stole money. Dunn then dropped back and passed to Llewellyn, who was stopped on the 12-yard line. 3 plays with the Packers pile-driving backfield, forging ahead, put the ball on the 1-foot line, and Melinda crashed over on a play at center. The pass from center was low, and Dunn did not have an opportunity to kick, so he tried a pass to Dilwig that fell incomplete. So at halftime, the score, ended with the Packers leading 20-0 on another 1-yard touchdown run. Darling intercepts a pass. Darling, who went in at center at the start of the third period, bobbed up and intercepted a Spartan pass soon after the start of the quarter. The Packers getting the ball on the Spartan 38-yard line. Dunn then dropped back on a fake line plunge and heaved the pass to McCrary, who galloped from the 15-yard line over the goal line. So it looks like it was a 38-yard touchdown run, according to this here. Spinning out of Bennett's arms at the 5-yard mark where the Spartan back tried to stop him. Dunn kicked kicked the ball from placement to give the Packers a 27-0 lead. McLean broke through on a great play soon after the score, tearing 35 yards to the Packers' 31-yard line before Nash caught him from behind. 2 plays failed to gain, and Lumpkin dropped back and passed to McLean, who was clear. McLean outran the Packers' secondary to score. The kick for the extra point was wide of the post. So it looks like that it was like the Spartans finally got on the board on a 31-yard pass play. The ever-alert Dillwig recovered a fumble punt by Bennett on the Spartan 41-yard line to give Green Bay another scoring opportunity. Herbert on a great run over right tackle cut back to the left and picked up 15 yards. Dunn then dropped back and on the identical play that was used earlier in the same period, passed to McCrary, who took the ball out of the hands of Bennett and raced over the goal. Melenda's kick from placement was good, and the Packers had a 33-6 advantage. So it looks like this was a 41. It looks like they got down to the 26-yard line and they made a 26-yard touchdown pass. Interference is ruled. In the fourth period, the Spartans were given the ball on the Packer 11-yard line when umpire Keefe ruled interference with a pass receiver. McLean added 2 yards, and then Novotny cut over tackle for a touchdown. So it looks like that might have been for Novotny, might have been a 9-yard run. Lewis's kick from placement added another point for the Spartans score. Running plays carried the ball from midfield to the 1-yard line for the Packers in the final period, and Fitzgibbons plunged over right tackle for a touchdown. And then Melenda added the extra point. The place kick. Final Green Bay marker came a minute before the end of the game. Zoodmulder had picked up 29 yards on 3 plays and pass. Llewellyn to Fitzgibbons was completed to put the ball deep in the Spartan territory. Llewellyn then dropped back to pass to Dillwig, who ran over the goal line without a man getting near him. Melinda added the final point with a placement kick. The game ended Green Bay's home season and sends the team on an invasion of foreign territory with a perfect record. 7 games are billed in the Midwest and East before the season ends on December 14th. So, but they'll have their hands full. And the final half of their season, they're going to lose 3 games. And, and I think they're going to get a tie in there too. So, against these very Spartans. So, they had their hands full. They did well at home, but on the road, it's going to be different story. So here we go. At the play-by-play, Michael kicked off to Lumpkin, who returned to his own 29-yard line where Nash tackled him. Lumpkin failed to gain at left guard. Glasgow lost 5 yards when Michael broke through and spilled him. Jennings punted, and the ball was down on the Packers' 34-yard line. Melinda made 4 yards over left guard. Melinda made 3 yards at right guard. Llewellyn made 9 yards at center for a first down. Llewellyn was tackled by Roberts for a 2-yard loss. Llewellyn made 2 yards over left tackle. A pass from Llewellyn to Dunn put the ball on the Spartans' 26-yard line. McCrary made 1.5 yards at right end. Llewellyn went over center for 5 yards. Llewellyn fumbled and Nash recovered about 3 yards over the scrimmage line for a first down. All right, Melinda made 5 yards on a spinner. Melinda crashed right guard for 4 yards. Melinda hit the same place for 2 yards and a first down. Llewellyn went over center for a touchdown. So they got down to the 26. I'd say maybe the 25, down to the 20, down to the 17, down to the 12, down to the 8, down to the 6. So it looks like, here it looks like they got like maybe a 5 or 6 yard touchdown run right here, according to this. Dunn added the extra point. Michael kicked off to Lumpkin, who made a great 50-yard return. to the Packers' 44-yard line, where Dunn stopped him. A pass from Lumpkin to Jennings put the ball on the Packers' 32-yard line. Glasgow made 2 yards at left tackle. Glasgow gained a yard at left tackle. Glasgow on double pass made 9 yards, putting the ball on the 21-yard line. Bennett was thrown for a 4-yard loss by Michael and Zuver. A pass was intercepted by McCrary on the Packer 12-yard line. McCrary made 4 yards over right tackle. Melinda made 1 yard over center. Llewellyn punted, and the ball was dead on the Packer 46-yard line. Lumpkin 4-yard over left guard. Bennett was spilled for no gain by Zuver and was called for offsides, and a 5-yard penalty resulted. Bennett made a scant yard for a first down. Bennett lost 1 yard at right tackle. A pass from Lumpkin to Glasgow was incomplete. On a double pass, Glasgow made 5 yards at left end as the quarter came to an end. Second quarter, a pass which Llewellyn tipped in trying to knock down bounced into Fleckenstein's hands on the Packers' 15-yard line. Lumpkin hit center for 3 yards. Glasgow made 3 yards at left tackle down to the 9-yard line. A pass was incomplete. A pass over the goal line was knocked down by Llewellyn, and it was the Packers' ball on the 20-yard line. So, yeah, they had the ball. Spartans had the ball down deep. Could have maybe, I don't know, tried a field goal or something like that, but they tried to throw a pass into the end zone. Got knocked down, and they lost the ball. Not that it probably would have mattered at the end of the game, but Llewellyn punted and the ball rolled dead on the Spartans' 30-yard line. Bennett went around right end for 15 yards and a first down. You see that? There's spelling errors here. And they Gerst down. Lumpkin, no gain at center. A pass was intercepted by McCrary on the Spartan 47-yard line. Melinda hit center for 7 yards. McCrary added 5 over left guard for a first down. Melinda made 4 yards at center. Melinda picked up 7 for another first down at right tackle. Llewellyn made 9 yards around right end. Melinda added 6 yards at center. McCrary lost 2 yards at right tackle. McCrary made no gain at center. A pass from Llewellyn to Dunn made only a 3-yard gain. Go back up to the top here. Okay. All right. On a pass play, Dunn scampered around right end to the 1-foot line. Llewellyn over right guard went in for the touchdown. Dunn kicked the goal. Michael kicked off to Lumpkin, who returned the ball to the 38-yard line. On a trick pass ball, it was knocked down for an incomplete pass. Glasgow was rushed on another pass play and lost 14 yards. Another incomplete pass caused a 5-yard penalty. Jennings punted, and after Dunn caught the ball, he tossed it across to Llewellyn, who ran 6 yards to the Spartan 45-yard line. McLean came in for Call in the Spartan lineup. Pass to McCrary was incomplete. Deweese, I guess, went in for Wesley, and Braidwood for Harris. Novotny in for Glasgow. Meyer went in for Fleckenstein. Mayer went in for Fleckenstein. Meyer went in for Roberts. A pass to Dunn was incomplete for a 5-yard penalty. Llewellyn punted and Nash down the ball on the 4-yard line. Jennings punted and Dunn returned 5 to the 35-yard line. McCrary made no gain at left end. O'Donnell went in for Nash. A pass from Dunn to Llewellyn put the ball on the Spartan 12-yard line. Melinda made 5 yards over center. Llewellyn plunged to the 1-foot line. Melinda carried the ball over for a touchdown. Extra point lost on a bad pass from center. Michael kicked off a short kick, and ball was down on the Spartan 40-yard line as the half came to an end. So with the Packers up 20-0, we start the second half. Michael kicked off to McLean, who fumbled, and the ball rolled over the goal line. Raddick tackling him behind the goal, but officials ruled it only a touchback, giving the Spartans the ball on the 20-yard line. Darling intercepted a pass on the Spartan 38-yard line. McCrary went 1 yard at right tackle on a 6-yard gain by Herbert. The Packers were offside and got a 5-yard penalty. A pass from Dunn to McCrary was good for a touchdown. McCrary running about 10 yards after making the catch. Dunn place kick for the extra point. So they had the ball on the 38. McCrary made 1 yard down to the 37. A 6 yard by Herbert. The Packers were offside. Got a 5 yard pass back to the 42, I guess. The pass from Dunn to McCrary was good for a touchdown. McCrary running. So it was maybe about a 42. According to this, it was a 42 yard pass play here for a touchdown after the 5 yard penalty. All right. Michael kicked off to Call, who was down on the 34 yard line. McLean reeled off 35 yards going over left side of the Packer line to the Packers' 31 yard line. McLean was spilled by Michael for a 4 yard loss. A pass to McLean caught the Packers napping, and he ran 15 yards for a score. So this one here, down to the 31 yard line, then the guy lost 4 yards back to the 35 yard line, and then they wound up throwing a pass, I guess, like 35 yards out. For the touchdown. All right, Jennings kicked off, and Dunn returned to the Packers' 26 yard line. Melinda made 1.5 yards over center. Melinda made 3 yards at right guard. Herbert punted, and Bennett fumbled. Dilwig recovering on the Spartan 41 yard line. Herbert made 15 yards on a cutback over left tackle. Herbert lost 1 yard in the same place. A pass done to McCrary, who ran only 10 yards, was good for a touchdown. All right, so now this one here. All right, so they got down to the 41. He made 15 down to the 26. Herbert lost a yard back to the 27. So it was like a 27-yard touchdown pass, looks like here. Melinda tried to place kick for extra point, which was blocked. Michael kicked off to McLean, who fumbled but recovered on his own 23-yard line. Lumpkin made 9 yards over left tackle. Bennett made 4 yards at right guard. Radek stopped Bennett after a 4-yard gain. Lumpkin went over center for 12 yards. A pass was knocked down by Dunn on a double pass. McLean went around left end for 12 yards and a first down. A pass was knocked down by Herbert. Lumpkin made 9 yards at left end. Lumpkin over 6 yards at right guard. Dunn was hurt, and Llewellyn took his place. Bennett made 2 yards at right end. Lumpkin made 2 yards at center. Lumpkin no gain, and a pass over the goal was knocked down by Llewellyn. Herb went in for Hubbard. Herbert punted, and the ball was down on the 31-yard line by Nash. Lumpkin no gain on out-of-bounds play as the quarter came to an end. So the fourth quarter, Lumpkin lost 1 yard at center. Lewis went in for Bennett. Novotny went in for Lumpkin. A pass was incomplete. Lewis punted, and Herbert returned 5 to the 30-yard line. Llewellyn punted, and Dilwig down Novotny on his own 21-yard line. McLean made 1 yard at right tackle. Glasgow went in for Call. Wooden went in for Zuber. A pass was incomplete. McLean made 4 yards at right guard. McLean punted, and Herbert returned 10 yards to midfield. Melinda made 9.5. Yards at right guard. McCrary made 3 yards in the same place. Fitzgibbons went in for McCrary. Fitzgibbons made 6 yards at left guard. Herbert made 11 yards over right tackle. Herbert made 9.5 yards. Melinda made 1.5 yards at right tackle. Fitzgibbons made 5 yards over left guard. Let's see. Melinda plunged over right tackle for 3.5 yards. Melinda added 1 yard on a plunge. Llewellyn took the ball to the 1 yard line. Perry went in for Michael, who was hurt on the play. I guess that's when his ankle, it got hurt. Fitzgibbons plunged over right guard for the 1 yard touchdown. Melinda added the extra point with place kick. O'Donnell went in for Tom Nash. Wooden kicked off, and the Spartans recovered on their own 25-yard line. Glasgow made 7 yards at left end. They passed to Kayer, was good for 13 yards or 15 yards. Say 15 yards. The runner being tackled by Herbert. A pass was knocked down. Another pass to McLean was good for 15 yards. Llewellyn making the tackle. Glasgow stopped by Raddick for no gain. A pass was incomplete. A pass was given the Spartan on the Packer 11-yard line for interference. I guess so, a penalty. McLean failed the gain. Novotny went over for a touchdown from apparently 11 yards out. Lewis made the extra point by a kick, and Zoodmulder went in for Herbert. McLean kicked off to Dilweg, who returned it to the 42-yard line. A pass to Llewellyn to Fitzgibbons put the ball on the Spartan 41-yard line. Zoodmulder went 15 yards at left tackle down to the 26. Zoodmulder made 3 yards at right end down to the 23. Zoodmulder made 7 yards and a first down to the 16. A pass to Llewellyn to Dillard was good for a touchdown. So we have the final score was like a 16-yard pass play. That's what it seems like there. Right down to the 41, made 15 yards, down to the 26, down to the 23, down to the 16, made 7 yards and a first down. So like a 16-yard pass play. Wanda added the extra point with a place kick. Wood kicked off to the Spartans, and the runner was stopped by Raddick as the game came to an end. Now we have some stats here. A lot of first downs here. I mean, for the Spartans to get 12 first downs as a losing team, that's pretty impressive. But you'll notice the Packers had 18. 18 first downs back in the day. That's a lot of first downs. Packers had 3 penalties for 15 yards. The Spartans, 3 penalties for 15 yards. So a very clean game. I mean, they could punt the ball. Look, I mean, Llewellyn averaged 56 yards a punt. Herbert, 48 yards a punt. Spartans, 42 yards a punt. And McLean, it was 40 yards a punt for him. Packers attempted 9 passes, completed 7 for 84 yards. That's what that says. 2 incomplete passes. Spartans threw 21 passes completed, but 5 for 111 yards. 13 were incomplete, but 3 were intercepted. Now you got the Packers running game here. 206 yards on 50 plays. They ran the ball 50 times. Averaged 4 yards a carry. Even the Spartans picked up 135 yards on 34 plays. They averaged 4 yards a carry. So both teams ran the ball very well. Sidelights. All right. It was at first thought that Michael had broken his ankle when he was carried from the field in the 4th period, but examination revealed only a fracture of a minor bone. The injury may keep Mike out of the Bears game. Red Dunn was knocked out in the first half of the game and had to be helped off the field. After a few minutes rest, Red came around all right and appeared to suffer no ill effects. An unusual play was recorded in the course of the game. Michael kicked off over the goal line to McLean, who tipped the ball as it sailed over his head. He picked the ball up, but before he could get started, 3 Packer men had come down the field and stopped him behind the goal line. The umpire ruled a safety for Bobby Kane. Bobby Kane, the referee, changed it to a touchback, ruling that the impetus that sent the ball over the goal line was furnished by the Packers. Interesting. Lumpkin made some fine returns of the kickoffs, on one occasion going 55 yards before he was stopped by Dunn. All right. And then we got stopped by Dunn, the only man between him and the goal line. Lumpkin smashed his way past 5 men who tried to stop him, but Dunn made a great tackle and did the trick. Duke Haney, who played with the Packers early this season, was in the Spartan uniform and saw some service at right tackle, as a tackle. Fleckenstein, former Fighting Bear player, also played for the Spartans. There may be several loyal fans who travel a long distance to see the Packers in action every Sunday, but Homer Don Levy, 87-year-old Oconto resident, probably is the oldest and still the most loyal of them all. Mr. Don Levy has not missed a game this season. Wow, 87 years old. So, I mean, even back then, man, they truly, they absolutely love their Packers. I mean, without question, they love their football in Green Bay. And you can see with the coverage of this game from the Green Bay Press Gazette. I mean, it's play by play. It's there are other teams that get that, but usually for the most part, you don't get that. And all those stats at the end of the game, how many yards each guy got, how the passes, the first downs, and all that. You just don't see that from other newspapers. So that's why it was on this date, November 2nd, 1930, between the Portsmouth Spartans and the Green Bay Packers at City Stadium in the professional football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.